Hey everybody, my name is Chase Pipes and you're watching Chasing History, brought to you by Smoky Mountain Relic Room and Arrowheads.com. And we're here with our good friend Chris Rossman. Chris,
Chase,
thanks man for coming on. Here's what we're going to do is we're going to explain the history behind Japanese World War II era flags. And how this all got started is I picked up a flag at a show and was showing it to Chris, and all of a sudden he started translating it for me. And I was like, are you kidding? You can freaking read what it says? That's so cool. It's like, so, every time, now I actually go for, flags that have that have writing on it because, it brings that history back to life. And Chris is a kensei. Now, can you explain to us exactly what that is?
the title kensei means sword saint, and it comes from the warrior priest tradition of a person who studied martial arts in depth, and also philosophy and Buddhism and Taoist principles. I studied with a very, very traditional instructor, so I had to learn a certain level of reading and writing of Japanese language because in my system, when a person gets promoted or whatever, it's not a mimeographed diploma, it's something that I painted myself. The Japanese language is very interesting. There's hiragana and katakana, which are the languages where if you picked up a Japanese newspaper, you'd see that, and a Japanese person can pick them up and read the paper and all that. But this is different.
That's what's interesting, is because, I've been to shows, and had Japanese customers look at the flag, and I said, can you help me translate? And they're like, well, no, we can't, because I can't read it. And I'm like, you can't read your own language? And then through talking with Chris, I found out why. And just explain to us why.
Yeah, very different than English, where if you have, let's say, never gone to college, you can still pick up a college-level book and read it and understand what you're reading. Well, with Japanese, it's very different. Education is very much related to how far they can read. That hiragana and katakana, everybody can read that. This is kanji, and sometimes there's also another language called banji. There's a language for the red stamps, seals that you see on things, called tensho. But this one is kanji, and kanji is a language that, interesting enough, a Japanese who knows or has this level of education could read it, but so could a Chinese, because it's very related to the Chinese language.
And that's why, because these aren't individual letters,
right?
Correct?
They're ideograms.
They're ideograms,
yes.
Which means that is a complete word in one character.
And actually, even bigger than that, it's a concept. So in the way it translates, it's almost like a hieroglyph in that sense. So unless a Japanese person has had the level of education where they started to learn this kind of calligraphy, this is why they look at it and either can't read it or they're going to give you very, very vague answers. To give you an idea of how that works, I'm going to just show you a little bit here how the language works. If I were to make this figure like this, okay, that means water, okay? If I made this figure like this, that means rice. Now, if I move this figure to here and put this connector here, that is the Japanese word ki, which means life, or like spirit, or your life energy, because water and rice was life.
Ah, okay.
So that gives you an idea of just how complicated.
It makes sense, but it is really complicated. Yeah. And what else is interesting is these characters over time, because it is a handwritten language, would I would assume would change, would alter slightly.
They have another whole language for things that are foreign to their culture.
Really?
Because kanji is set in stone. Kanji doesn't change. But because new concepts come in, they actually have, it's an extension onto the katakana and hiragana that is for foreign concepts and sounds like our names.
Yeah.
When I write my name in Japanese lettering, it goes to phonetics. So a Japanese person would look at it and it would come out sounding like Chris Rossman kind of thing. But unless he knew me, he'd look at that and say, well, what does that noise mean?
You know what's real interesting though, and something is in the symbolism here is when they're joined, it's very spiritual. You know, and that's what's always fascinated me about the Japanese culture is that in every aspect of life, there's a strong sense of a spiritual belief behind almost everything, and especially in flags like these. And I guess that's one of the reasons why they would choose to write on these flags, because see, these flags aren't meant to be flown. These aren't flags that would have been up to flagpoles. Right. These are flags that were meant to be carried, and the term for that is Memori.
Yeah, Memori is when certain things like flags or prayers or things were written on paper. They became kind of like a lucky charm, an empowered object, something to kind of protect you from the forces that are out of your normal control.
So kind of like a medicine bundle to people here to the native cultures in North America. The native peoples would carry with them either around their neck or on their person a medicine bundle, and what it was a collection of the most sacred objects to them. And I've seen inside of some historic medicine bundles, and I mean it's everything from sage, which is what you would expect, to just a random rock, a little bit of horsehair, just stuff like that. So that's what these flags are, and that's man, that's really cool. Now, what do we got on this flag right here?
Okay, on this flag here we have, this is the good luck flag is a very common pattern among the Japanese flags. There's certain recipe to them that you'll see is very common. On the good luck flags you will see writing that radiates out from around that sun. That's a typical pattern of that. There's usually some bigger, thicker writing in other areas that is denoting certain main concepts of what that flag was about. Like, for example, this flag was a good luck flag. It was given to a certain person. We have right here Daigo Ishikawa, and the theme of this one revolved around Bushido, which is the Japanese code of honor, and you have major characters here. We put that on our translation piece here, talking about the concepts or the main virtues of Bushido: integrity, respect, heroic courage, honor, compassion, honesty, and sincerity, duty, and loyalty. So they wanted this person to be a shining example of the Japanese warrior out there on the battlefield. Wanted to, bring him luck and, hopefully come back home as this, victorious warrior. Very firm in that culture of that time is that's the way you came home or you didn't come home.
Right.
Yeah.
Because honor, especially in battle, is something that's extremely sacred, and to have something that you carry with on your person to remind you of that all the time, that's pretty cool. It just goes into their sense of belief and that. So.
And where it gets so complicated with the translation is it's not, when you translate, it's not just a mechanical thing. You have to know about the culture. Because there's meanings in things that change, or there's meanings that you have to kind of know what direction you're going in. For an example, like this character that I just drew on here, that character by itself is pronounced Michi, okay? And I don't remember, it's not on this one, it might be on one of the other ones, but anyway, depending what you hook that up with, Michi just means a path in the woods, dirt path. You hook it up to something and it can mean a life path, like a way of life. Two totally different things. You got to realize what it's hooked to for that to make sense. So on a flag or something where there might be, it's a figure that almost looks like a house. It's a square with like a little roof over it. It's pronounced I in Japanese. And you hook that with this, all of a sudden you have this life path rather than just a dirt path in the road. So when I was figuring out these concepts for Bushido, that kind of thing comes into play with it. And all of a sudden, I have to realize that, oh yeah, we're talking about honor, where that character by itself could have also meant just to be serious. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See, you said something a little bit earlier that I wanted to reiterate again, is that you said you can't read this like mechanical, like mechanics. There's so much more involved in this, and it's all based on spirituality and spiritualism. These are very powerful, meaningful things, and that's, instead of it, just being a flag, this is as personal of a thing as you can get. So that's cool.
This is like a way of bringing your friends and your ancestors to you spiritually, for them to come into combat with you.
And that's, we'll talk about swords on our next Chasing History episode, but we'll talk more about that on swords. I want to show guys another flag. We've got several we want to show you guys to give you guys a view of the different types of flags that you will see out there. Now, this is another common flag. This is typically what you would see at a trade show or a gun show or wherever. This is your typical flag where you've got the Imperial House symbol up on top in the biggest and boldest lettering, and then down here you'll have the 13 prayers to the Buddha. What's interesting about that is that if you count those, there's only 12 because the 13th one is sent to the air.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and also the 13th Buddha, Dainichi Nyorai, is the Buddha that they all emanate from. So again, different kind of thinking because they all emanate from that one. That one is never usually portrayed. Yeah.
What's interesting about this flag is, and that's what is so cool about having somebody like Chris that can translate it, is these flags are stories, and it's bringing those stories back to life. And bringing that history back to life. I mean, to me, when I first started on this journey a long time ago, this is just a flag with crazy lettering on it. But after being around Chris, it now has it's much more meaningful and respect added to it, because the history behind this flag, you were able to translate is this is the one that was in China.
Yeah.
And this was in its specific purpose. It was during a fall and winter campaign, and the purpose of the owner of this flag was to drive metal rods in the ground. This
is very notorious. The strong belief in life energy, okay, and how it flows through all things. And if it's disrupted, you bring sickness and disease to the land. You wither crops, the whole 9 yards. This flag was written with things to drain the strength, drain the vitality from their enemies. And it was used in a campaign where, and they're still finding them to this day, they have unearthed literally thousands of these iron rods, and there's probably thousands more yet, that the Japanese were driving into the ground at specific locations that they felt would disrupt the earth energy of the land and make crops wither, make cattle and livestock sick, make the people weak and sick. So, I mean, here is a level of psychological warfare, because you're talking about two groups of people that thoroughly believe in this, whether we want to believe in it or not. Like a voodoo doll. If you believe it and I stick it with a pin, you're gonna get worried about it. Well, that same kind of concept. So this was a campaign to just destroy the spirit of the Chinese people.
And see, that's what's fascinating is because, being able to read this, it opens up a whole new story that you never even would have, I never in my life would have considered the fact that, the Japanese, when they fighting in the Shinto War, would drive iron spikes into the ground to mess up the voodoo, I mean, that's just, it's wild. I never thought that. But it allows you, it's like time capsules, and it unlocks a story that just, leads you on to more awesome, cool stories. So that's cool. This flag. I want to get to another one here. This has got a real neat flag, and I've never seen this before. And you described it as the shredded meatball. And see, this is the same as the one we just showed, with your Imperial House symbols up here and your prayers to the Buddha radiating out from down here. But then you've got the shredded meatball.
Yeah.
So what's this all about?
This is a flag for a campaign that is of great importance, and the type of campaign that is only going to succeed, or I should say end, in this group, basically a suicide mission. Some kind of infiltration, some kind of mission was going to be done where it was that kind of thing where, well, we can go in and hit, but there's no way we're getting out. So when you see that shredding, that was for a suicide mission, and not just any suicide mission, not like the desperation of let's say, a kamikaze pilot where we're at the end of the war, this is all we got, and I'm going to just use my plane like a bomb. This is more like a high-level special forces. In the old days, this might have been a ninja group that were highly trained, highly expert. They're going to go in there, they're going to do some kind of very high-level, intense damage. Not just a bunch of guys throwing their lives away, but it's going to either put them in so deep or put them in such a situation that highly unlikely that they're getting out.
Now, why did they choose to shred it? And just the center portion? Why? What does the shredding of it mean? Is it like
the sun is very prominent figure to Japan. Amaterasu Okami, the sun god, was their main deity in their Shinto / Buddhist practice. The emperor was supposed to be the son of heaven, the son of the sun god. Shredding that figure, they are releasing the power of the sun god, and they're symbolically showing that I am also releasing my spirit to be accepted by the gods for this incredible mission that I'm going to do.
See, that makes a lot of sense because here in North America, native cultures did almost the exact same thing. They would do what's called killing, and that is they would take an artifact and they would break it. When it's broken, then they would bury it, and what you're doing is you're in a sense breaking the spirit of that artifact, releasing it, and then they would bury it. And sometimes archaeologists have come across caches of just these broken blades that were destroyed on purpose. So that's interesting to see that same type of mindset, that same type of mentality, literally on the other side of the world, being practiced thousands of years later.
That concept actually translates into the ritual suicide, seppuku. That splitting of the abdomen was this area on the body. The Japanese believe is the seat of the spirit, and they would split their abdomen open to immediately release their spirit. I've heard some goofy things on that where people go, well, they were trying to show how tough they were, so that's the worst place. Had nothing to do with that at all. That was the seat of energy, and they wanted that release. So other things like a flag also had areas that was the seat of their energy.
That's so cool. God, this is such a cool story. All right, let's do, this is the last one, and this is by far the neatest one, and I guess I got lucky on this one. When I showed it to Chris, and he came back to me the next day, he said, "You don't understand what you just picked up. This is the coolest flag I've ever seen." So, Chris,
yeah, I even made like a map for you.
yeah. So, explain to everybody out there why this is so significant.
Yeah, this is incredible. There's a tradition in Japan called the Yamabushi, Shugendo. These were mountain people that lived mostly in the Iga and Koga regions of Japan. Very, very mountainous, very isolated. Main body Japan was never interested in the area. You can't farm it. You can hardly put a road through it. Even to this day, very few people live up there. These were the groups that eventually, during the time of the unification of Japan, when Nobunaga was running his troops through Japan, unifying it, this was the only time that they became of interest, because they were like, well, you know what, these folks they got to become part of what's going on here. These were the folks that became what were later called the ninja, okay? Highly specialized warrior priests with knowledge and traditions from all over the world, because that mountain area of Japan became a safe haven for where if you were some famous martial artist for the emperor over in China, or for somebody in Korea, or somebody even from India, and then you fell out of favor, you aggravated somebody, and you were exiled, you could go to these mountains in Japan, nobody bothered you, you lived your life out. So there was an incredible collection of knowledge from all of Asia up in those mountains. From martial arts, meditation, philosophy, religion, all kinds of stuff. Highly secretive group. Highly secretive group. When I started my study of Shugendo 35 years ago with my teacher, there was nothing written that he could pass to me, because it was so taboo to have anything that anybody could find. You can go to the library now and get or Amazon and find some books on Shugendo and things like that, because even the intense practitioners that are still around realize secrecy is riding it into extinction. So that's no longer the case. But so you're talking about something that just recently has opened up in the public. If I had seen this flag 30 years ago, I wouldn't have translated it. Once I started to realize what it is, I would have translated it. I would have lied and said, you know what, I can't read this one, because I would have been afraid to put that out there, because there were still people who would maybe go after you for that. Right. But not the case anymore.
God, that's just wild. I mean, it is that powerful of a thing. Yeah. You know, that's cool. All right.
This flag is just an incredible power item. You have this sword that's drawn here. Now that sword, when that appears like that, is a symbol of a deity called the Fudomyo, which I provided you with a picture of. The Fudomyo is one of those wrathful, scary-looking Buddhist deities who burns through lies and deceptions, cuts through illusion to lead people to enlightenment. One of the main deities of Shugendo. These type of monks that follow the Fudomyo group are the monks that walk on fire, that do they take like a certain amount of years, I believe it's for 15 years, and they do a hike through the mountains, where by the time you add up all the miles that they've hiked in the 15 years, they have basically walked around the planet Earth. Wow. I mean, they do these incredible austerities, some of them incredible martial arts. These are like the kind of people that, like some of the high-level Tibetan monks that will sit in snow and melt the snow around them. They just do stuff that is superhuman, supernatural, incredible. This flag was, without a doubt in my mind, put together, painted. Prayers were said over this. Shugendo rituals were performed over this. This was meant to be an incredible, incredible power item. And when you see kanji...
Zoom in here on this. This is really cool.
Yeah, that looks like this, where the ink is really strangely broken up. And you notice it's not like that on all the writing. Just on these main ones. This ink was mixed with the blood of the priest who said the prayers over it. That's what makes ink do that.
That's just insanely cool. I mean, that's just, talk about, getting as spiritual and as deep as possible. I mean, adding in your own life force into what you were writing. Literally, physically adding your own life force to it. I mean, that's just amazing. Why would they mix ink with the blood? Is it to add that sense of life force?
Well, the thing is, that was a very, very high-level priest, because not every, basic run-of-the-mill priest's blood was considered that valuable. This had to be somebody who was probably considered like a treasure, a living treasure within the Shugendo system, that blood would be valued like that. Also, things that are done in here just show the high level of the way the universe was viewed. Like, for example, here, this flag, this is right side up for this flag, yet this is all upside down. Now that's upside down. It shows how to this person was so enlightened, they were like the center of the universe. They're demonstrating to them there's no right, there's no left, there's no up, there's no down. They are the center, and everything radiates out from them. There's kanji down here that are written in mirror image. To translate it, I was holding, because it's too confusing, I was holding a mirror to it. First of all, to be able to do that, because believe me, I've seen folks do it, they don't do it with the mirror. they can just clear their head well enough to do that. That is mirror image on writing, or when you look at the samurai woodblock prints, and if you've ever noticed, like some of them, you'll see they put the eyes like the person's cross-eyed. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. And people look at that like, why in the world are they doing that? There's a secret to that. Mirror image writing, cross-eyed images show reflection of the spirit within. Their eyes are crossed because they're looking inside. The mirror image is because they are from inside. So this flag is just, I mean, this one's just amazing. You could probably pull a lot more flags in front of me, and I think it's going to be a real long time before come across another one like this.
You know, what's interesting is and that's the whole reason why I wanted to do this episode, is because, you know, after, you know, spending time with Chris and learning more about these flags, you know, I saw that there was something there that we really don't ever get a chance to understand, and that is the spiritualism, you know, and the deep religious belief behind something that, you know, until I got hanging around you, I was like, oh, it's just a flag, you know, crazy writing, whoop-de-doo, you know. But, you know, when you learn, you know, the meanings behind it, you know, it really gives a lot more respect, you know, to the artifact itself, and also to the period of history where this was, you know, all taking place. It makes it more human, and that's what's interesting. That's what's fascinating about artifacts is a lot of people look at artifacts as just, you know, it's just a, you know, it's a rock, or it's, you know, this, that, or the other. But, you know, when you look at it, you know, this way, like with these flags, it brings in that human element, and you keep in mind, you know, you touch yourself, and you're like, well, I'm real, I'm alive now, and you look at these flags and you think, you know, there was somebody that was real, that was alive, who had their own story, just like you have your own story. That they had their own story, and it's all written here. His whole story is right there, and to me, that's freaking cool, you know?
I'd like to share something really special with you on this, and again, this is something that years ago I would not have been able to do. This has written on it what's referred to as the Kuji-in, which is the 9 gates of power, which is a spiritual, meditative practice that modern-day ninja believe brought them invincibility. Shugendo from the ancient time brought them invincibility and incredible connection with the spirit. So I'd like to take the translation off of this and show you what gets hooked to the words that are on here, which they would never have put on there. And that's why, again, yeah, if I didn't have Shugendo practice, there would be 9 words on there that I'd look at you and go, hey Chase, there's these funny 9 words, I don't know what the heck they mean. But I do, so I'd like to demonstrate that for you.
That would be great.
Rin. This hand configuration is used in meditation for having the strength and ability to overcome your enemies and to defeat them on all grounds, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Po. This hand configuration is to have the energy to succeed, to triumph, whether you're sick, whether you're wounded, whether you're dying. To. This energy is for knowing when it's time to just flow with the process of the universe. Sometimes it's called the inner lion. Sha. This is to promote healing for yourself if you're sick or you're injured, and to make your environment healthy. Kai. This is to have an expanded awareness and to feel and be able to recognize a premonition of danger. Jin. This is to have the ability to know the thoughts of others and to project thoughts to others. Ritsu. This is to be clouded with the power of the universe, to be able to perform superhuman feats if needed. Zai. This is to be able to see things from a divine perspective, to be able to watch yourself, your situation, and your environment from a detached point of view. Zen. This is to be invisible to all lowly, resentful, and evil people, and to be able to vanish in the face of disaster.
That's cool. That's cool. I took my hat off for that one. Chris, man, I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much for doing this and for sharing your knowledge with us. I mean, you know, I really appreciate it, and I know everybody out there watching does too. So, you know, guys, thanks for watching. Yeah, be sure to follow us on Facebook. Follow us on, of course, the rest of our YouTube videos. Got a lot more great videos. We will never, ever, ever be on Twitter. I like Twitter. No Twitter. So just remember, guys, you know, how do you make the world a better place? Just one person at a time. Be good to yourselves, be good to others, and be good people. And most of all, why do we do this? Why do we chase history, man? Because how do you know where you're going unless you know where you've been? It's in studying and understanding the mistakes of the past that prevent the failures of the future. See you guys. Y'all be good. Chris, thanks, man. Woo!